Growing up, I had as ideal of a childhood, I think, as anybody can ask for. I had a close-knit family. I was active in sports. I played the drums and all kinds of extracurricular activities and things, of that nature. I can always remember, I guess, being happy and kind of running around. And I was, if I wasn't with, my father, I was with mother, and if I wasn't with them, I was, either at school or playing soccer or something, but real active, real joyful, childhood. And I think that, looking back, I was definitely a pretty happy kid. The first time I ever used prescription drugs, I guess, was it was Vicodin or Norco or something of that nature, and it was an opiate. And it seemed, pretty innocent. It was prescribed from, a doctor, and I don't remember if it was due to an injury. I think it was actually a dental procedure. I think I got my wisdom teeth taken out, and the dentist prescribed me, a pretty small amount of Vicodin, but I can definitely recall even taking it, as prescribed, which, my mother was careful to kind of administer, my doses and things like that. I think I was 15 or 16, and it might have, I guess the effects it had, I got high just from, the prescribed amount. It was slow to transition, it was definitely a feeling that I enjoyed, and like I said, I was comfortable, and I wanted to, I guess maybe the drug-seeking behavior began around that time, and I more and more often started to take them behind my parents' backs, or go into the the medicine cabinet and kind of look around for any kind of opiate that I could find.
My childhood was I had a very good upbringing. I grew up, mom, dad, sister. I grew up here in Jackson, actually. Went to East Jackson High School, grew up on a lake. I had everything provided for me that I could ever ask for. I was given cars, jobs. I went to college. So I guess you could say I had your middle class upbringing as a child. First time I tried prescription opiates, I was 16 years old. I was an athlete at East Jackson High School and got introduced to Vicodin. That quickly got very expensive, turned to Oxycontin, other prescription drugs, and then I started using heroin when I was 18 years old. I heard about people being addicted to drugs, and I guess it's one of those things where you don't think it's going to happen to you, and it does.
My childhood was real easygoing, real laid back. I had great parents, supportive, that gave me everything I ever could ask for. They were never absent. Always were there for me. They never missed one of my sporting events. My dad had a great job. My mom had a good job. I played a lot of athletics throughout my childhood. I was real close with my family. I was involved in athletics my entire life. Not until middle school did I realize that I excelled a lot in basketball and football, but mainly basketball. And then in high school, I played 4 years of varsity basketball. I was the sixth man off the bench my freshman year. I actually started in districts my freshman year. I've started in more games than anybody in my school's history. Second or third in scoring in my high school's history. I hold the record for most three-pointers in a season, most three-pointers in a game, most three-pointers in a career. And, I had probably 20 to 25 schools that were, interested in me playing college basketball, and quite a few scholarship offers. I believe the first time that I used prescription opiates, I was probably 16 or 17 years old. A friend actually had broken his leg. playing basketball and got a prescription for 500 milligram hydrocodone Vicodin pills, and he had given me a couple in the hallway during school one day, and he said, take 2 of these, and he was a friend, I didn't ask too many questions about it, so, I drank alcohol and smoked marijuana before that, so I took them, and I really enjoyed it.
Andy, he was a quiet kid growing up, played a lot by himself. I mean, he loved playing by himself. Very neat young man. He made sure all his socks were in the drawer the right way. He was that type of kid. His room was clean. Never had any problems with Andy growing up. He was the funniest kid I ever met at a young age, and he always did what he was told to do. You didn't have to scream and yell and holler at him. I don't think he was. I don't ever remember him being bad. I do remember one time when he was about 16. I told my wife that I said, something's not right with Andy. She says, what do you mean? And I said, he hasn't been in trouble. He's 16 years old, and he hasn't been in trouble. I said, that seems a little odd. And I was, of course, obviously just making a joke about it. And, boy, I ate those words later. But I'm just trying to illustrate what kind of kid he was. He was a really nice young man. I'm not exactly sure when he first dove into the world of prescription opiates. First time I found out about it was July 2007. He had been acting different than his normal attitude. He had missed work. He became aggressive. It wasn't his style. He had severe mood swings, hanging around people that I did not know and did not like. And one day we had a little confrontation in the driveway, and I said, "You got some kind of problem you want to tell me about? A drug problem, maybe?" And he said, "Absolutely not, Dad. I don't have a drug problem." And he spun out of the driveway 100 miles an hour. And he came back 5 minutes later. And he said, "I got to tell you something." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I do have a problem." He said, "I'm hooked on Oxycontin." And me, being the person that didn't know much about the whole drug problem, I remember when he told me, "I'm hooked on Oxycontin," I said, "Well, thank God. I was worried you're using that heroin that kids are using."
My first experience using, I think I was coming out of a relationship, that went south, I guess, and I had a lot of feelings and emotions and stuff that I didn't know how to necessarily cope with outside of, using some substance, I guess, a drug. I remember kind of opening this little, it was wrapped up in like a lotto ticket or something, and I opened it and it looked harmless, what I mean? It looked like things that I have already done, up until this point, and I snorted it, and the feeling that came over me, that euphoria was, I want to use another word than phenomenal, but it's hard to describe, I want to use a word that's not, glorifying it, because it was like something had a grip on me, at that point in time. Injecting for the first time was, it had me. I was a slave to heroin, and I was a slave to heroin the first time I used, but when I injected, I took it to a different level, I guess I expedited the whole process, and the using cycle dramatically, It may be intimate, I guess, to inject yourself with a drug, that you are well aware of the dangers and the risks involved, but, that first time, I'll never forget it. Day, in the life, I guess, of a using heroin addict for myself was, I would wake up and hopefully I wasn't sick already. If I was, it was a scramble to get more. If I was not sick, it was kind of the same story, so it was a scramble to get money or drugs or a means to get more. I would have to use if I was working, and there for a while I was working while I was in addiction for my father, and I kind of would mosey into work, and I was just real unreliable. It was miserable. It was just constant chaos, constant, extreme highs, extreme lows. The use was never what I wanted, it was never enough. And I don't know if, what I was chasing was, this overdose experience or this brush with death or, whatever, but it seemed like at the time that my addiction and this disease wanted me dead. And it seemed like it wanted to hurt, me, my friends, my family, my, loved ones, take everything I had, take everything they had, that I had access to, and then kill me. And during that whole process, I would be okay with it.
First time I did heroin, I was hanging out with a buddy, an old friend, and I've heard of heroin. I've watched documentaries on TV about it and how it's one of the most deadliest drugs known to man and the epidemic around the United States. And I snorted it the first time I did it, and the first time I did it was like a warm, soft hug from God. And I never knew where it would take me after that, and it took me to places that I never imagined any human being could go. I snorted it for probably 2 or 3 weeks, probably 3 or 4 times a week. So I snorted probably 8 to 10 times, and then I used a needle. I was deathly afraid of needles, and I was told that it was not like going to the hospital and getting a shot. It was way different, and I did it the first time, and I used every single day. A day in the life of a drug addict. I'd wake up early in the morning. I would always try to get enough dope to last me through the day, and then in the morning when I wake up, and so I wouldn't have to be sick, but it would never work out that way. I would always use it all that night, and I would wake up puking on myself, can't get out of the bathroom, felt like my legs were being stabbed with knives, just really, really bad, and I would go to any lengths to get my drug. I wouldn't mess with anything else. Prescription opiates were, if they were offered to me, I wouldn't even take them. I would do anything I could do to get heroin, anything. I've called into work. I've made up crazy excuses. I've lied to my parents on countless occasions. I've stole TVs from my family. Just anything I could do to get it, anything. There was a 1.5 to 2 year stretch where I really wouldn't get all that high. It would just to not be sick.
By the time I was 18 years old, I was addicted to Vicodins. I did those for about a year. Then I had a loss in the family, and I was introduced to oxycodone pills. I took those, then Oxycontin, then morphine pills, then oxymorphone pills, then fentanyl, and then couldn't always get fentanyl. So when I was 22 years old, I started snorting heroin. The first time I ever snorted heroin, it truly is kind of like a warm sensation that comes over you. You can feel it, all through your body. You taste it down the back of your throat. It's just like a warming sensation that kind of like a warm blanket being draped over you. A day in the life of my addiction usually consisted of waking up in the morning. The day before, I would usually try to save dope for in the morning, which never worked. I would always end up doing it the night before. So I'd go to work dope sick until my lunch break. I would sit at my desk, and work or daydream until I could leave on my lunch break, hit the bank, and then go to my dope dealer's house, get drugs, and then come back to work and feel good enough to work the remainder of the day. And then when I got out of work, I would go back to the dope dealer's house and buy more drugs or heroin, and that would last me that night, and then do it all over again.
Here's some thoughts from Andy when he was in rehab, and he wrote these down. And like I said, these were personal notes. I didn't find them until about a year ago. But here's one of the questions on the questionnaire that they had. It's feeling guilty or shameful about my behaviors. Now, a lot of parents think they don't care. They don't feel guilty. They're not ashamed of what they do. Well, here's what he wrote.
An example, he says, I'm letting down the people who love me. I'm pawning things. I'm spending all my paycheck. He was all guilty and shameful about all those things. So you have to understand these are thoughts from within himself when he's in rehab. Effects on my emotional health. I can't function without drugs. Feeling like an outcast. Thinking about all the money I've spent. Effects on my social life. I would rather be high than looking for love. Missing work because I was too sick to go. Effects on my school or work life. Missing work when I couldn't get any drugs. Taking 2-hour lunches. Waiting for drugs. Couldn't work unless I was high. You have to understand that when you're under full-blown addiction, you can't function unless you have that drug in your system. You can't even get out of bed. Has my preoccupation led to insane or strange behavior? He wrote, not being able to sleep and severe depression. Has my preoccupation led to loss of memory? I would black out for hours, repeating myself to my parents, forgetting things that I've learned at work. Has my preoccupation led to destructive behavior against myself or others? Blacking out a number of times, loss of relationships, destroys my body. So they understand and they know all these things, but they can't stop, and I know that's hard to understand, but that's the effects of the drug. That's how powerful this is. Have I made promises to myself that I have broken? Quitting drugs. That was when I broke. Not spending money on drugs, broke that. Doing drugs and driving, broke that. Have I denied I had a problem? To my friends, to my family, and to myself. Has my addiction affected my self-esteem? Can't be social without being high. Have I tried to relieve my pain about my behavior, and how? Self-pity, blaming it on the dealer. The more money I make, the more drugs I can do.
I checked into the Holden House, and I met a lady, and she kind of walked me in and was real welcoming, and I was definitely uncomfortable, but I think it was for the best, and they sent me to a detox that was a non-medical detox, which I think is important because for me, it grounded me, and it showed me, when I was going through the withdrawals and how miserable and how terrible and how uncomfortable that all was, that really showed me the reality of my using, and that these are, this is not normal. This is not a normal person, that I was so, I guess, quick to convince myself that I was, and that nobody else understood why I used and what it felt like and everything like that. And, my addiction would tell me that I was normal. And, when I was going through my withdrawals and the detox process, I spent like 3 days or 3 nights, at least I couldn't sleep, and I spent like 3 nights curled up on a shower floor. And that's how, real it got for me was, just the reality that this is not what a normal person doesn't experience things like this. A normal person doesn't feel like this. A normal person doesn't spend 3 nights on a floor in a shower because he can't sleep, because he's so uncomfortable. And, I got sick, got countless times, from the withdrawals, and eventually they released me back into the Holden House, and that was kind of where I guess my recovery started. Was the Holden House was really adamant about taking you to outside meetings. So not only were you in a controlled environment, but you were also meeting other members of the community that were in recovery, and you got to see firsthand, that this process, that even the 12 steps, that people live this process, and people besides myself, I guess I'll say, are actually clean. I was able to string together 8 or 9 months clean, and I think I was working again, and think it was, just the fact that maybe I thought that I had things under control again, and I drove back down to Jackson one probably sunny day and decided that I was going to use. And, it's just that easy. It's that easy for, for anybody, I guess, who's addicted, but, especially a heroin addict, that's just such an intimate relationship with your drugs that, in your using process, that it's hard to get out of. It's really hard to sever those bonds and sever those ties, even with, the people or the so-called friends, that you use with. It's a really tight bond, and even if it's false, it feels very real. So I used a handful of times and came clean with the pastor and some of the other members of that transitional house, and said that I had used. And again, fortunately, they didn't just throw me out, and they didn't kick me to the curb. They helped me. And my life today is a lot different. I've totally, a lot has changed, in my thinking, my behaviors, my attitudes. I'd like to believe, at least, that I've matured a little bit, but it's progressed to, a point that I guess I could say that I'm a productive member of society. I pay my bills, I have a little house, a couple little dogs, life. I guess I've always heard, I had a good buddy who told me, getting into recovery and starting your recovery process, I guess, or the journey, if you were to write a list of what you expected to accomplish or achieve or get, materialistically or anything like that, in a given amount of time, you'd be selling yourself short. And, I gotta say that he hit the nail on the head, because, I guess that's what I've experienced. I have goals today. I have, I'm ambitious. My relationships today are more meaningful. They're, joy-filled, and they're not so one-sided, what I can get from this person. It's, I guess it's genuine,
The first time I went to Brighton, actually, I moved to a transitional house, sober living environment in Sterling Heights, Michigan. I thought that if I kind of left Jackson, that I would never use again, knowing that I take the addiction with me. It's much more than drugs. It's it's behavior and attitudes, and I'm addicted to all sorts of things: women, money, gambling. There's a long list of them, and I thought that once I moved from Jackson, I would just stop using forever. I was clean for about 4.5, 5 months, and started smoking pot, thinking that it wouldn't be an issue, and then quickly moved to heroin, and then moved back to Jackson. Went to detox, got out of detox, and used the day I got out. I've been in treatment about 3 or 4 times. I've been to Brighton a couple times. I liked it so much I went back. And I guess the breaking point for me was when Mike sent me to the Holden House in Lansing. I actually tried to get drugs while I was in there. Didn't work out so well. And yeah, it just, I guess I wanted to stop using. I just didn't know how. And there was people that were using while they were in treatment, and like everywhere you go. And I guess I wanted that change. It was kind of like it was like the last house on the block with their light on that said, "Come on in," and I found myself through that place. I think about drugs in one form or another every single day. I work in the field of recovery, so I help recovering addicts on a daily basis. I see a lot of people use, and I guess it doesn't strike my eye like it used to, because I see people that get clean for a long time and use one time and lose everything. I'm not willing to do that today. I have so much to lose. I've got, if I put a list together of the things I wanted when I got clean, I would be selling myself short.
on a daily basis, being a recovering addict or trying to be in recovery as a heroin addict is the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. You're just your brain chemistry and the things that make you happy and give you motivation are just so diminished, that the second that you have an urge, the cards are so stacked against you that it's everything in your being to say no. And when you feel that way and you know what's going to make you feel better and you know who's got what's going to make you feel better, and he'll probably even front it to you, you don't even need the money. It's a lot of times that's why you relapse. And it doesn't fix itself within a couple weeks or a couple months. It takes 6 months, a year, or 2 years for you to feel normal again. And that's what the hardest part is. It's not even you think quitting would be the hardest part, and that is really, really hard. But for me, I found out staying quit, for lack of better words, is the hardest part. My life now is still pretty it's still pretty hard on a day-to-day basis, just because of the fact that I've screwed up my brain chemistry so bad that it's really hard battling the depression, low dopamine levels, and the lack of motivation. While your brain heals, it's pretty hard to do a lot of things. But today I can get out and do some things without having to do drugs. I spend a lot more time with my niece. I'm actually clean when I'm with her. But it's still a struggle every day. So.
Braden Recovery Center. He went there for 2 weeks, which I thought, that's there's quite a bit of money spent there in 2 weeks. Nobody told me anything about the real work starts when you get out of rehab. I was assuming that you go to a rehab facility and boy, they fix you up, detox you, and you come out of there and you got a new lease on life. And the real work starts when you get out. He was back to using again. He got caught on a simple possession charge. He was caught with 1/10 of a gram, which is a tiny user amount. So he went to jail for 3 days, I believe. Got him right out of jail. Dad's not going to let him sit in jail. Got him right out of jail. Got him right into the rehab facility again, and this time we went 2 weeks again. We got out, and he goes, boy, I'm never going back to that. I'm not touching that stuff, Dad. I'm telling you what, I'm all done with that. That just about ruined my life. And once again, he was back using within the first few weeks of rehab. We had a confrontation at our house one morning because I saw a drug dealer's phone number on his phone. And that morning, I told him I'd meet me at the office at 10 o'clock. He said, okay. I happened to drive aimlessly around that morning trying to get my thoughts together, and as I came up Michigan Avenue, there was an ambulance in front of me. And I noticed one of my trucks was also in front of that ambulance. And I got out, and he had overdosed there at the wheel of the car. Pulled off to the side, and they already had him in the ambulance, and he was barely conscious at the time. And we got him to the hospital right away. And he recovered from that overdose. And so he was on probation for this possession charge, and he violated probation. He was on a program at the jail where he had to go and randomly drug tested. He dropped dirty, and he was put in jail for 90 days. I believe he got out in 76 days for good behavior. And after that, he looked fantastic. Matter of fact, when we picked him up, he said, I'm never going back to jail. I'm never going back to the drug, ever. And, he really believed that. And all the addicts I've talked to since, they say the same thing, and they really believe it. And they really want to. But it's easier said than done, that's for sure. And he did well at work for the first couple of weeks. And I'm going to guess maybe he'd been at work 5 weeks now since he got out of jail. And I saw him one day, and I said, hey, how's it going today? He said, not very good. I'm really depressed. And that was in the morning. And then about noon, I talked to him and went over and saw him on the job site, as a matter of fact. And I said, how's it going? He said, I'm having a horrible day, Dad. And I said, well, I'll pick you up at 3:30. We'll go do something fun. And he said, like what? There's nothing fun to do. And I said, we'll think of something. And I got the call at 2:40, maybe 2:30, that you need to get over to the job site right away. I said, is it Andy? They said, yep. Second, I got to gather myself a little bit. So when I arrived at the job site, what had happened is a drug dealer had brought the drug to the site, handed it to him. He went into an outhouse at approximately 2:30 and injected, and he died right in the outhouse. They pulled him out and tried to resuscitate him. Just takes me a second. And as a parent, there's no worse sight than to watch your child try to be resuscitated. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And so there we went from a young man who had everything going for him, every opportunity in the world, and he dies in an outhouse at the age of 24. So that's what we're about, because we don't want that to happen again. We don't want it to happen to your family. We don't want it to happen to anybody's family. And there's a lot we can do about this. So after Andy's death, I took 3 days of grieving, I guess you call it. And the day of the funeral, I came out swinging. I made sure several of the kids in town that were already addicted were there, and we talked about it at his funeral. I gave a talk during the funeral, and I specifically talked about that, and what we were going to do about it, and what needed to be done about it, and I think that was the start of the whole program. Talking to my wife and daughters, and I said, we're going to start a foundation, and we're going to help some of these kids. And of course, everybody on our crew, everybody in our family, we're all fighters, and we're not going to lay down for anybody. And we thought it was the thing to do, and we thought we were the people to do it.
You know, somehow my mother came across Mike Hirst and Andy's Angels, and when she, sat down and kind of talked to me about it, she said, would you please give this guy a call, and just give him a call. And he's easy to talk to, and she was kind of building him up, and I said, I don't know who this guy is, and he sure as hell doesn't know who I am, and why would he want to, and there was a number of things going through my mind, and eventually once I had kind of, once all those have kind of ran their course, I picked up the phone one day, and I said I'll give him a call, and so I called him, and he was an easygoing guy. He was easy to talk to. He asked if he had a simple request. I think the only thing he asked was that that I meet him for lunch or meet him for coffee or something of that nature, and I said I could commit to that, and I think I don't know if I ever did, but I definitely met him, and he kind of began telling me a little bit of his story and a little bit of how he became involved with Andy's Angels and what his mission was, and how that heroin had impacted him, and not only him but his family as well. And not long after that, I went to Brighton for the first time. So I think I met Mike and Andy's Angels at a relatively crucial point, I think, in my using that. Even though I didn't stay clean when I got out of Brighton, it planted a seed. That there was people who didn't know me, and that those people cared, and they didn't have to know every detail of my addiction and my using and my journey or my walk, I guess, but that they cared.
Andy's Angels helped me by providing me with kind of paved the path for me. Getting into treatment is very difficult, especially if you do not have insurance. It is almost impossible to get into rehab without insurance or a large amount of money. And Mike and Andy's Angels provided me with that safe haven, and they funded me to go to treatment, and they invested a lot of money into me, and I relapsed, and they kind of just never gave up on me, and they eventually, the last time they helped me, I haven't looked back since, because I know if I were to use, I would lose everything.
Mike's been a huge help in my life, maybe even saved my life, by my mom reaching out to him over the fact that I wouldn't stop using, and I actually met him around the time that I was invited to speak at the first annual Jackson Drug Summit. I was invited by the prosecutor, and Mike was there with some other fellow Andy's Angels, and we just clicked right off the bat, and I've been speaking with Mike ever since. Definitely being involved with Andy's Angels, with Families for Hope, the prosecutor, Mr. Jarzinka, and the Jackson County Drug Task Force, and having the opportunity to go to high schools and speak to kids is, the biggest key to me staying on track. There's nothing that's more powerful in fighting, my relapses, and I just thank God that I had the opportunity to do that.
So there's a story I like to tell. It's an old story, but everybody needs a little refresher on this story because it's a really important story. And people ask me a lot of times, why do you spend so much time on all these addicts? The recovery rate's really low. You're really pretty much wasting your time. So I have to remind them of the starfish story, and it goes kind of like this. There was a young kid walking down the beach one day, and he sees an old man standing by the edge of the water, picking something up and throwing it in the water. And he says, "Hey, old man, what are you doing down there?" The old man looks at him and says, "Sun's up, tide's out. These starfish are trapped on the beach. They're surely going to die." The old man picks a couple more up, throws them in the water. And the kid says, "Hey, old man, as I look down this beach, that's all I can see for miles and miles are these starfish. You're not going to save them all." The old man says, "Yeah." Throws another one in. And the young kid, he looks at him again and he says, "Listen, you could do this all day long and you would never make a difference." And the old man bends down, picks another one up, throws in the water, has a little smile, looks at the young kid and said, "I bet it made a difference to that one." So when you think that you're not making a difference because you're not saving everybody out there, if you can just save one, you've made a big difference in that person's life. And that's why we do this. And that's why we work so hard at it. And I'll take it a little bit farther. If everybody sitting on that beach that day got up off their towel, took a little bit of time out of their little leisure time, walked down to the edge of that water, picked up a starfish and threw it in, well, you wouldn't only just make a difference, but you changed the path of the nation.
I'm only one call away. I'll be there to save the day. Superman got nothing on me. I'm only one call away. Call me baby if you need a friend. I just wanna give you love. Come on, come on, come on. Reaching out to you, so take a chance. No matter where you go,